Um, Good evening. Thank you very much for allowing me to present today. This is an opportunity for many of you to get your own back on the various questions I've asked during your seminars. I would first like to congratulate my fellow presenters on being selected to this first of what I hope to be many great presentations. Just to kind of forewarn you, my presentation today will take a slightly different approach, basically possibly blaming the business school for many of the social ills that we find in the wider society and how we might resolve this. In today's society, basically, what does integrity, trust, character actually mean? Now, I would argue that once upon a time, these were an external evaluation of an individual's ethical, moral compass. Sadly today, possibly very cynically, I would argue that they are actually just marketable commodities that organizations use to increase their performance and individual business leaders use to promote their careers. We widely recognize that consumers prefer buying products and services from organizations that they trust will show good character and integrity. Sadly, though, in most cases, trust, integrity, and character are used by organizations to hide their questionable behaviors. For example, investment bankers. Even though responsible for one of the biggest recessions, we're all too happy to demand taxpayers to pay out on their bonuses. Journalists, once more, very happy to pry into very private, often painful moments in individuals' lives. The police, just found responsible for one of the biggest scandals and tragedies in English football. And politicians, well, do I really need to say more? But let's put it this way. It's amazing how a 1,600-pound duck house is an essential commodity during a recession. Now, many of you may well draw back to the classic Friedman argument of, hang on a moment, businesses are just simply doing what businesses do, make profits. That's what they're there for. Now, while I might well go along with this during Friedman's era when there were small, medium-sized companies, today the Fortune 500 far exceed most economies of the world, but a handful. We could also go along the avenue of, hang on a moment, don't blame businesses. The government should be regulating more. The consumers should be more ethical in their purchases. Investors should be more moral in their investments. I agree with each and every one of those statements. I do not refute it. I do not see how it absolves the businesses of their ethical and moral duties. There's this other approach that we often take, which is somehow we believe that business leaders are incapable of moral, ethical decision-making, that somehow they should be exempt from it. After all, they are there to make profit. When we consider that they are present at such important conferences as the G8, and the decisions taken in the organizational boardrooms affect not just their organizations, but the wider society, can we really go along with that? And let's be honest, is it even fair to be so derogatory against our business leaders? Now, another argument that we can put forward is a paper put forward by Sumanta Ghoshal. He was one of a very notable set of academics in business who basically said, hang on a moment, let's go back to the basics. The reason why we have so many problems in organizations is because we as business schools actually teach them this behavior. When we go back to the 60s and 70s, we find that a lot of the focus was on MBAs. To get them into the business school, we needed to have some kind of material that they could take in, see affect their organizations and possibly increase their salaries. Now, an easy way of doing this is to talk about revenue, costs, profits. These are things that can be clearly calculated, measured, and results shown. Now, while we're 50 years later, the reality is this profit rationalization perspective still is our current mantra. We still talk about corporate social responsibility and ethics through the same lens. We encourage our PhD students in world-renowned departments in international business, etc., to focus on what is its impact on organizational performance. Alternatively, we have real estate departments which are amongst the best in the world, and yet again, they're focused on finances. They don't consider possibly answering questions such as homelessness, housing for the poor. Is it therefore any wonder that Crane and Matten, for example, found that business students are possibly amongst the less ethical and moral of any students from any subject? In this kind of context, you might argue, hang on a moment, where is the blame to be placed? Well, obviously, the subject draws a lot of people who are interested in money, power, status, and possibly in that respect, we need to refocus on who it is that we accept onto our courses. Maybe we also need to start examining the courses that we're delivering, not from the profit rationalization perspective, but separating subjects such as CSR and ethics from this, so that we engage students, we engage ourselves purely in this discourse. Now, another option might be to actually have modules purely focused on ethics, morality, philosophy as an important cornerstone of our programs. We always have to remember that as students come to us with the most precious commodity of all, their mind, that it's important that it is filled like an empty vessel with information. But knowledge is the application of information, and therefore it is important that we guide this morally and ethically. So the students who leave us do not just leave us as full of information, but as business leaders who will transform into social leaders with real social impact. Now, there are many of you who will be sitting there going, this is a naive dream. What can he possibly know? Fine, I accept this comment. I may be a very naive dreamer coming to you with a dream. But I ask you, just this morning, I found that there are parts of the UK where there's child poverty as high as 50%, where children are still going to bed hungry because their parents can't pay for food. Okay, so how about change? Well, change is difficult, but change is possible. We see this every day. The saddest thing is, while we have taken gigantic leaps in subjects such as technology, economics, this has not been matched by social development. In fact, in many cases, we have seen social stagnation. The issues that my grandfather fought 50 years ago are still in place today. Now, there'll be others of you who say, but we've evolved to the highest level of social possibility. Capitalism is the solution. Well, every single society, whether it's Romans, Greeks, etc., you name it, every single one of them believed, this is the highest form of human evolution. We have reached the pinnacle. And within several decades, through their own decadence and corruption, they became a burning effigy, collapsed, and a new civilization was born. So the reality is that we are but a punctuation on the timeline of the world. Now, as I'm closing on my time, I will leave you with the final words of a great dreamer, Martin Luther King Jr., who said it was intelligence plus character that are the true goals of education. So let us just bear in mind that when we as business schools teach people about our subjects, that we do so not just through profit rationalization, but an ethical and moral compass, so that terms like integrity, trust, and character can once more be recaptured in their true meaning. Thank you very much.